Ladies and gentlemen, we're very happy to have with us today Shandana Khan, who is the CEO of Rural Support Program Network. Shandana has around 32 years of experience in rural community-driven development in Pakistan. So RSPN, which Shandana is heading, works through a network of RSPs spread across Pakistan, focusing on poverty alleviation, community mobilization, policy and advocacy. Shandana, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam. So, some wonderful work you have done under the RSP and umbrella. Starting the conversation, can you just help our viewers understand what exactly is RSPN and how closely you've been working under the RSPs with the government of Pakistan and also sometimes with international donors?
Thank you. Thank you to IPRI and to you, Noor, for inviting me. The RSPs are the country's largest civil society network. We are proud to be local organizations with the capacity to work with rural communities in some of the most remote parts of the country. And the whole approach started off with the Aga Khan Foundation's program, the Aga Khan Rural Support Program, AKRSP in Gilgit-Baltistan, Chitral. And this was in 1982, December. And the approach is that unless people organize, it is very difficult that development initiatives should reach, individual households, and especially the poorest. So this process of what is called social mobilization is at the core of the RSP approach. It is a completely localized way of working. The way you work with communities in one part of the country may not be the same as in another part of the country. For example, in Sindh province has the biggest grassroots women's development program with RSPs.
Is that so?
And this is funded by the Sindh government.
Wow.
It's called the People's Poverty Reduction Program. And it has been complemented by a very generous European Union investment through a program called Success in Sindh. Now, in another province, maybe we would not be able to just work only with women. We would have to first work with the men and the women, or maybe start at the same time. So this approach of organizing, working with communities has led to a direct outreach of the RSPs to 8.4 million households, which means that the people living in these households, which is a population of over 53 million, are members of community organizations. So they meet every month to make development plans, to discuss their issues. They do a lot of self-help work themselves, which is not necessarily funded. For example, they may decide to do an enrollment campaign, to do a plantation campaign, to do a village cleaning campaign. So what you are doing here is creating this, strengthening social capital in these villages. They select a leader, somebody whom they trust, whom we train. They have bookkeepers and managers who keep records because they deal with savings. Every household that is a member does a monthly saving, whatever the capacity of the household is.
Right.
Can be 5 rupees, it can be 500 rupees. So they have organizational accounts. So there is a system at the grassroots through which RSPs partner with rural communities to do development work.
Wow, that's amazing. That sounds amazing. It seems that the hallmark of your work is to enable communities to help themselves.
Yeah, that is really what it is. You also asked about government. I must say here that the government has been a big supporter in setting up RSPs. If you look at the National Rural Support Program, if you look at support given to, after they were set up, to the Sarhad Rural Support Program, Sindh Rural Support Organization, SRSO, was actually set up with Government of Sindh funds. Balochistan RSP has got support from there. There's a Ghazi Barotha RSP which has got support as well. So the idea really is that government sets up support organizations who mobilize communities through which government departments can work more effectively. And of course, we do, other donor-funded programs as well. How far that has been successful, I think it's sort of checkered from place to place. But we are still, looking towards having government work through these community institutions, as we call them, on a sort of more formalized basis, which has not yet happened.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So what I understand and what you have elaborated very, very beautifully is that you're working necessarily as an intermediary between the government and the local communities. So in that sense, how do you read the government's budgetary focus, particularly at provincial level, towards poverty alleviation? And how reliant do you think Pakistan is right now on international assistance money in that sense?
So, well, I think we all know the economic situation of Pakistan, which is not terribly good. But I think that within what we have, so if you look at, for example, the budget of an education department, in X district of Balochistan, right? There is still a lot that can be done with the government. What are the big issues there? The big issues there and other places is, the enrollment of children.
Right.
Now, when you have organized communities, and this is what we're doing, the parents who are members of those community organizations, they're beginning to put their children in school. If there is teacher absenteeism, this is something which the government of Balochistan is committed to sorting out with us, because the teachers are employed by them.
Right.
Issues that require funding, yes, there are many schools that don't have proper water supply or sanitation, which discourages girls from attending.
Right.
That is something where we are getting funding from a big global education alliance called Education Cannot Wait, which is a multi-donor effort administered by the UN. There are still things we can do. Things are not always 100% reliant on resources. So what I'm saying is that even within available resources, these can be, put to better use if there is a collaboration.
Right, right. Okay, so I was looking into your projects, and it seems that a lot of your work is focused on gender development, on education, like you said, health, water, and sanitation. And I was reading a recent report by World Bank which states that poverty is expected to reach 37.2% in Pakistan by 2023, by the end of 2023, and around 50 million Pakistanis are pushed down the poverty line. So what exactly do you think is pushing Pakistanis down or further towards poverty, and what exactly can be done about it? Where should the government basically focus, since you have such extensive experience on the field also, and then working with the government?
So, no, let me give you a very micro example, because then from that we can extrapolate. In Balochistan province, the National Rural Support Program and the Balochistan Rural Support Program and RSP network are implementing an EU-funded program, which is community-driven. And we saw that in year 2021, the number of poor households in the areas, we picked up a sample that we worked in, decreased by 8%. This is just 2-3 years on in the program.
Right.
Between 2021 and then 2022, when we revisited that, we found that the number of poor households had actually increased by 8 to 10%. So it's because of the overall economic situation. And then, of course, it was because of the floods also. Yes. Some of these areas were impacted by the floods. What we do is work at a very micro level with the poorest households. And if their incomes have increased by 16% or 15% in 4 years, we find that the current economic atmosphere is so challenging that it's eating away into the efforts made by communities and the investments made. This is, of course, not something that only communities or RSPs can tackle. This is the larger picture. So definitely there is an impact. Yeah.
Right. So can you, as per your experience, really define poverty? What is poverty in your point of view, and how badly can it affect a community and really lock it in cycles of repetitive exploitation and deprivation, especially in context of Pakistan and Balochistan and Sindh, where you have extensively worked?
So it's multi-dimensional, right? You see that we work on increase in incomes, but when you work on increase in incomes, you see how important education also is.
Right.
And actually, when people's incomes increase, their first investment is in their children's education,
Right.
and women particularly.
Right.
Apart from food expenditure, what is the biggest shock to poor household is big health expenditure, and that can take a family into a cycle of repeated debt.
Right.
So it's a few things that people identify, and these are the programs that we implement. That access to skills, access to capital, whether it's grant or whether it's loans, and information and links to sell to access markets. But
Right.
we do all this after forming the groups.
Right.
It can't be done individually. It's too expensive. You don't go to each household and do this.
I see.
And also, when people are together, then you get economies of scale. There are so many cases where if people want to buy fertilizer, they'll get together, they'll get one transport, they'll pool in the money, and one person will go to the market. If they want to sell something, they do this. And so there are many women's business groups and other groups that do this. So, and then, of course, there is also poverty has a terrible psychological impact, and this is actually the worst to see, is that if you ask people what can you do, and if the response is look at our situation, what can we do, so it's the psychological impact which you see in very, very poor areas, where you realize that people need more support. And having said that, I must say that when we talk to, say, poor women in Sindh, they come up with a lot of ideas. I can keep chickens and sell eggs. I can make money. मेरे पास एक बकरी है, अगर दूसरी हो, I can multiply them or sell them at either. These are the small things that people can do themselves. Small in the sense that they require very little investment. So this is how you move. But yes, the big picture has to be better, because we all are working under this big picture.
So what I understand from you is that there is an overlap of culture and structure here, which both we have to address at the same time systematically to help communities move out of poverty, not just individuals.
Yes, and then there are, then there are things like land ownership.
Yeah.
If you're working with Haris in Sindh, or you're working with zamindars in KP, then you cannot invest, let's say, in significant infrastructure on that land, because it belongs to an individual.
Right.
If you're doing community work, then you have to look at other ways of doing things. So we had examples in Sindh where it was a nutrition program, is funded by the EU, and the women were interested in kitchen gardens, and some of them just said that we don't even have land to plant those few vegetables. So structural issues, are at the core.
Right.
Of something like this, of poverty in such cases.
That is very well explained. Chandana, how do you read the current floods devastation? Because your organization has in the past also worked with disaster relief management. How devastating do you think these floods actually were? And was Pakistan able to get enough donor attention? And if it was able to get the attention, the designated or earmarked funds, do you think that the state has a history or has a future even to make the best use of these funds so that at least some amount of the devastation can be reversed?
So I am not aware of the figures of what has come in. I have a feeling it is probably 5% or under, right? Actually, what has come in. But I'm not sure. My information may be outdated.
Okay.
What I can say is that we were approached by various donors, and some were very generous. The EU, added on to some of the grants that we had with them to work in Sindh, which has been worst affected. And then there were, of course, relief programs. There were some, organizations who may not be big funders, but they were very quick to act, like the British Asian Trust, which is, has an office in Pakistan, and other, NGOs whom we had not even worked with. And this was a quick turnaround of funds for relief. Now, of course, the challenge is there is still relief required in some parts of Sindh. If you look at Khairpur district, there are still villages underwater. But the bulk of the work now is the reconstruction. And I know that the World Bank, the ADB, other large donors and governments have put in funds for housing and for other things. This is still to be rolled out. It's been many months now, but it's still to be rolled out. But my fear is that what was needed or what the ask was has not come in, and I think this is going to be a big challenge. I wonder sometimes if we can find local solutions to these things,
I see.
and that means engaging with the government, looking at what resources there are, engaging with communities, because communities will not sit without housing, right? They've already rebuilt sheds and rebuilt whatever they could.
Right.
So I think that we need to, in a situation of economic crisis and a future is, this is not going to be a rich country in 10, 20 years, right? I think we need to look at local solutions.
Right.
And we have people who can do that, and we have the community outreach. And I think we need to look at this instead of looking outwards all the time.
How dependent do you think the RSPs are in terms of scaling their impact? They are generating impact on community basis at provincial level. Sometimes the government, like the Singh government, you said, is very receptive. But how dependent do you think the RSPs are in terms of scaling or realizing the true potential of their projects on the government? And which ministries have you been engaging with, and you think that they could perhaps facilitated you better or responded better to you, or which have actually you have a good experience with?
So I think the most important thing is political will and support.
Right.
You have a political leader at any level who is truly committed to something like this, and we have seen that they have approached us to work in their areas. Some of them have provided their M&A MPA funds to work through this methodology in their area, and I think that is very, very key. Currently, and yes, I keep talking about Sindh, is that we see a very strong political commitment in Sindh to grassroots poverty reduction. And as I said, it's 100% women's program, the People's Poverty Reduction Program. So we have very senior political leaders who will come and they will sit with these women's groups and they will listen to them. It's not like a political jalsa where the women are putting forth demands. They will listen that, and each woman gets up and says, I got just a loan of 20,000 and I did this. And I sent my child to school and I improved my roof. And another woman. So I think that this is very, very important. And once the political will is there, then of course the machinery starts to move. In a lot of cases, yes, there are very dedicated bureaucrats who know the RSPs well,
Right.
and we have been engaged with them over many decades. A case in point has been the P&D departments in the provinces. There are many ministries that we work with, and the key ones, of course, are agriculture, food security, livestock, health, education, PHED. The challenge is that, these departments at the district level need to work through the community groups that have formed.
Right.
And this does happen. It's happening on a very big scale, but it's all ad hoc.
Right.
So you have many, committed professionals in the government, in many different, departments, who want to work through communities and who realize the benefit of working through community groups. So, for example, if I'm in the health department, I need to do polio vaccination or EPI or COVID vaccination, and I go to one contact point in a community organization. That contact point can gather all the hundreds of households and the children from there for me to vaccinate, instead of me going spending petrol and or if I'm a forest officer and I go to an organized community and I say we need to plant 40,000 trees here, they will do it. So it works both ways, and our constant struggle is how do we formalize this so that our work can complement what government does, and government can be more accountable to the people also.
That's very well said. Speaking of accountability, Shandana, why is there this perception in international community that the funds, even assistance or development funds disbursed to Pakistan, are very susceptible to misappropriation? Why is there a real transparency or corruption issue in Pakistan, since we have worked, again, extensively?
Well, I can only talk about our own systems. and because the bulk of our funds are coming from foreign donors and countries, they have very stringent systems.
Yes.
In fact, these days we are undergoing an assessment of our systems, our internal policies, our gender policies, our safeguarding policies. Safeguarding policies, I mean, this is about the people we work with, and if they have any complaint against our staff,
Right.
they have a hotline they can call. So the accountability to the people that we work with. So and then of course there's a statutory external audit, there is an internal audit, there's an internal compliance. As to what you said, yeah, this is the big picture impression. It's terrible because we all live under this impression, although many of us work hard and are honest honest workers, and we run organizations that don't tolerate this at all. But unfortunately, yes, this is the impression that there is. Yeah.
Right. So, what I have gathered from our conversation so far, Shandana, is that there is work being done in individual capacity in terms of, for example, Pakistan government is doing what it can do. The NGOs and RSPs, for example, are doing. The international community is showing due interest, considering that the entire global economy is in relative recession. Can you think of or recommend us any particular mechanisms that the government can set up so that the synergies between these three sectors, donor community, NGOs and RSPs, for example, and the government ministries, relevant ministries, like you said, Planning and Development Commission, the synergies in the flow of communication between them or accountability between them for projects can increase?
So as I said, we have now help people to organize, the over 8 million households. And our simple ask to the government everywhere is for the provinces to instruct district level departments to work through these community groups.
Right.
How they engage, we can facilitate. If some planning capacity needs to be improved in communities, that is something we can do. So that the public services and resources get out more effectively to the people.
Right.
I think this is this is why the RSPs were set up, but this is a continuous challenge. Yeah.
So, you have experience working in India and Afghanistan also as a part of these RSPs. Can you help us understand if there is room for better international relations of Pakistan with its neighboring countries, for example, even India, through non-governmental sector or people-to-people contact, like even through RSPs or representatives like you, which have invested in public sector here and even can take lessons from here to the other side of the border and vice versa even?
So I myself, it is really my boss, our chairman, Mr. Shoaib Sultan Khan, who's the guru of development in the region and has won international awards, and the government has given him awards, national awards as well. So my exposure to these programs was because of him. And this was a program which started under the SAARC umbrella in 1994. It was called the South Asia Poverty Alleviation Program, SAPAP. And Shoaib Sultan Saab was the senior advisor rural development to the UNDP. So the UNDP put in money to replicate this RSP approach from Pakistan in 5 countries.
Oh, really?
And very few people know this, that, we had a good thing here which others wanted to learn about, and which an international donor, which the UN funded. So this happened in India, in Andhra Pradesh, in Sri Lanka, in Nepal, in Maldives. And I myself went to Nepal and Maldives to help with this for a short period. I wasn't engaged full time. But I must say here that since you're talking of neighbors and regional collaboration, that in India we had government servants, government officials from India who came in the mid 90s to see the RSPs and to see this approach. And in India, the Society for Elimination of Rural Poverty, SERP, was set up through UNDP funding to do exactly what the RSPs are meant to do. And I think it has an outreach to 10 million women. But then a national program based on the Andhra Pradesh SERP program was rolled out, called the National Rural Livelihoods Mission, which is the biggest rural development program globally.
Wow.
And it is, I don't know how many, it's a large country, so it's probably reaching billions of people. And it's a women's program.
Oh.
It's all run by women.
Amazing.
So about 15 years ago, when the heads of the RSPs went there to see this, because they had come and we knew them, and they had visited KP and interacted with the government, after which the KP government gave Sarhad RSP an endowment. So there was a lot of exchange happening.
I see.
We went to see it and we learnt a few things. One was using local community resource persons to spread the program. So instead of being staff heavy, you rely on community individuals. The other was that this was a 100% women's program. And, you know, some of the RSPs got very encouraged by this and came back, and, you know, there was a commitment that the next round of funding we get, we will do a 100% women's program. So that is how we have increased the ratio of women working in rural areas with us. I wish that things were better with neighbors, because this doesn't serve anybody's purpose.
Right.
You know, it doesn't. There is so much learning we can do. The other day, I was thinking that, you know, we are working on a mother and child program. And one of the areas we work in is menstrual health with women. And one of the big problems in poor rural households is, well, they cannot use the facilities that you know, women who have better resources can use. And I remember watching this Indian movie called Padman,
Yes.
where they had made you know, simple 5 machines, and I had been to Gujarat, India, where I saw women making these, selling them to women's prisons, women's hostels. And I thought, I wish I could just pick up the phone and say, can we buy these things from you, and can you bring them across this border, send them across, and we could do such good work. But unfortunately we can't. I think we need to move beyond this for the sake of our people, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So Shandana, this has been a very, very interesting conversation. I definitely have learned a lot. Just closing this on a note where you can educate us further. How bad do you think the economic situation in Pakistan is right now? And if the government, given the lack of political effort or political will or focus basically that it has right now, and the lack of budgetary focus, considering that obviously the government is also working through the same economic issues, which key areas do you think the government should focus on priority basis at least? They cannot be neglected by any means, or else more and more people will be pushed down the poverty line.
Well, I think, of course, you know, the key area right now is to get the economy to jumpstart it, because the economic situation is not good. I can only talk really at the micro level. I think the macro level, you know better than me, and others listening probably know better than me. But at the micro level, when you have a situation where a household, literally, you know, if you add 1,600 rupees to the monthly income of a household, that in some households is up to 23% of their income. Now you can imagine what they earn, and what is the purchasing power of just, you know, a bag of wheat for a household which is 6 people plus. But as I said, within this situation, we can still do a lot. I think there needs to be a greater commitment towards this. But of course, you know, we are not actors that can improve the big picture, right? Those are decisions that other people have to take. But those other people must keep in mind that, you know, this is what the bulk of your population is, and this is what their life is. So I think one needs to focus on that and not be detracted by other things.
Thank you so much, Shandana, for your time. This has been very enlightening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Shukriya.
That's it from IPRI. Thank you very much for watching.